Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Culture Clash podcast, where Russia and American discuss and debate some of the hot topics in the news. I'm Michael.
I'm Vlad. Hello, everyone.
We have Dima here still, so our new frequent guest, and we're going to be talking about something else today. It's nicotine. So kind of a significant departure from tariffs, from economy, from everything else. But again, we want to stay up to date with trends and whatnot. Nicotine and different ways of consumption is pretty much blowing up everywhere. So with that, I kick it over to you, Vlad.
Yeah, sure. So you say it's kind of moving away from the politics and everything. I disagree with that already.
You're going to bring it back to politics.
Yes,
all right.
Because actually nicotine is a kind of the public battleground for different policymakers. Because if you look globally right now, you can see some countries that are trying to make it more accessible, make it more legal, make it more regulated to be accessible for the society. At the same time, a lot of countries, they just ban it. They ban different ways of nicotine consumption. With that, you have corporations inventing different and new ways to deliver nicotine, to consume nicotine, to make it more attractive. So basically now one can argue that it's not just nicotine as it used to be as a cigarettes or something like that, where you see these people like smoking. It's becoming a vibe. It's becoming the social thing. It's becoming the part of a fashion. Actually, it has always been part of a fashion, I think, if you look at the old Hollywood movies or something like that. So, and now it's even more like it's the innovation. It's a new technology. You have this like cool vibe around it. So today is the battleground between the corporations and between the different countries. So it's not only that. So I personally can see two trends, and this is what I want to discuss mostly. The first one is we definitely can see that the nicotine consumption increases with different ways. Cigarettes consumption is falling down, but all the vapes, shishas, how do you call this? Chewing gums, pouches, and like IQOS and all this stuff. The variety increasing, and the amount of people smoking increasing, and at the same time, I would say different societies, different countries, they prefer different types of nicotine. So why do you guys think it's happening?
You want to tackle that one first? You want me to go?
That's fascinating topic. I'm not actually aware that nicotine use is on the rise.
It's on huge rise, especially among the young generation.
Gen Z, I think, specifically.
Gen Z specifically, and not cigarettes. Cigarettes falling down.
In my opinion, it's a legal narcotic. That's a fact. That's the same as alcohol. And it's a big cultural thing for sure, because it has been with us for thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands of years. The entire human civilization.
Yeah, basically was consuming some sort of narcotics. Some of them became legal. Some of them are not. You can argue that the ones that are legal are most like a little bit safer than those that are illegal. But again, now there is a huge push from safety standpoint that actually smoking leads to cancer, etc., etc. These kind of relations were not known like 100 years ago. But why nicotine consumption is growing is a great question. I think that it should be analyzed in a big picture way. It might be a function of the fact that let's say people are less happy for some reason, or it becomes a social phenomenon of some sort. Maybe new ways of consumption are easier and much less hurtful. It's much easier to promote this kind of use. So I don't know for sure, but I think we can work out some hypothesis at least.
Absolutely.
I have my own hypothesis. It's an awesome drug. Nicotine is awesome. I mean, I think.
Okay, good start.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, granted, this is coming from a recovering nicotine addict, but that's fine. Again, nicotine is great for focus, right? We've all used nicotine. We're probably going to use nicotine. We used it yesterday. We're probably going to use it again later. Amazing for focus, right? It's an appetite suppressant. It gives you a dopamine hit right in your brain. Gives you energy as well. So I don't think the question should necessarily be why is nicotine on the rise, but I think actually it should be, but I think the answer to it is not the drug itself, but the delivery mechanisms.
Okay.
And this is what becomes very important. And I think you hit the nail on the head with going over all the different types of nicotine inhalation or ways of consuming it. And my guess is, and maybe you have the numbers, that vaping is the main cause of the increase in Gen Z nicotine usage.
Vaping,
is
yes,
that right?
especially in the US market. Vaping is like the most dominant way of nicotine delivery in the US market now. In other countries, not like that. For example, in Russia, it's still cigarettes.
Yeah.
For example, in Europe in general, it's still about the cigarettes. Yet, Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, they are the main, like the capital of nicotine pouches.
Yeah, that's right.
And the US, it was something like 18% of the young generation, so of people below 25-year-old, 18% of them, they consume vape at least once a week.
Yeah, and exactly. So what I saw was that you've got, so to your point, vape has now moved ahead of cigarettes in terms
Yes.
of regular American usage, up to 15% of Americans,
Overall.
Overall adult Amerians,
Okay.
that 10 to 15% are actively vaping.
Okay.
So I'm seeing 12 to 14% on cigarettes, again, traditional cigarettes, whereas that's 20 to 25% globally. So you do see these wild swings in Eastern Europe where it's over 30%, Western Europe 15 to 25, China, big smoking country, 25
Yes.
to 30%. So my initial reaction to that would probably be it has to do a little bit with affluence, right? So in these typically more innovative markets, again, the US, you have a lot of innovation, a lot of technology. The Americans are constantly finding new ways to consume whatever unhealthy drugs, or any type of substance, right? We're very good at that. So we do that with the THC now. We've got THC vapes. We've got THC drinks.
What is this?
THC is the active ingredient in cannabis. So now obviously we have the vapes as well. So you take in the vape, which is your way of getting the nicotine. And again, you can make cigarettes, which don't taste good, into a really smooth, really tasty kind of way of consuming it. So I think that's what's going on. Again, nicotine has a universal appeal. It's like caffeine, but better, right? I mean, there's like clear benefits from a isolated use perspective. So yeah, I mean that's sort of my read on that. The pouches I think are really interesting. That you're seeing that new innovation as well. So yeah.
How does it work?
The pouch?
Yeah, you tried this, right?
Yeah, I've done all these, and
you've done all these.
yeah. And
Because Dima and I we tried only like one type of nicotine delivery,
which is
right?
shisha.
Which is shisha.
That's you guys have never tried anything else. No vape, no cigarette.
Vape I tried. I
You
tried
tried?
vape. It's very natural. If you smoke shisha, then trying vape is natural. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't understand how people are
Exactly.
smoking.
Exactly.
It's got to be terrible for you.
I don't understand
It
how
is,
you can
and it's proven. I actually watch one of the biggest YouTubers in US healthcare, and it is already proven that vape has this glycerin
yeah.
burning thing that is not good. And what is especially I think dangerous, and I think we're going to talk about whether it's good or bad, but what I remember vividly is that the fact that there are no long-term studies about vaping is very potentially dangerous, because you never know how the body will react in a long term for abuse or heavy use of a certain way of delivering nicotine, because population have been smoking cigarettes for a very long time, and there are a lot of studies and understanding that as you said, the chemical composition is kind of it's not bad by itself, but the way of delivering is not perfect, because smoking creates a lot of hazards for your breathing system. So it's definitely not good. But yeah, these new ways are still unproven to be safe. And America, for example, has such examples when new technology have been using for some time, and then it has been worked out that it was not safe.
Yeah, that's true.
Like lead paint.
Lead paint.
yeah.
There was a type of the petrol, I think, in the very beginning.
Yes,
right?
leaded gas.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a huge disaster for the U.S.
We tend to shoot first and ask questions later, metaphorically and sometimes also literally. But yeah, interesting is that when I went through the nicotine experience and
Nicotine delivery system.
yeah, and when I tried every single of the delivery systems that we've talked about here, interesting was that I started with the vape. And to your point, vape at first it's tasty, right? It's an easy delivery mechanism.
It is extremely tasty.
Extremely.
Yes, it's just so strong that it's incomparable, I think, to anything else.
Strong nicotine content as well, which is a problem.
But it depends. Yeah, you can choose to make it nicotine free even, or
yeah, I guess you could. But again, if you do the nicotine vape, the other issue I noticed is that you can always be on your vape. So whereas cigarettes, you would typically have to go outside.
Exactly.
It's a process. It's not easy. There's
that
barriers.
should be a good point. Why it is
Why it's so
what is
popular.
growing? Yeah, why it's popular.
Low friction.
Ease of
Very
use.
low friction.
Ease of use,
Yes.
low friction.
I mean, you could just have it in your pocket, and when the teacher, you could be smoking in class. The teacher turns around, you go take a puff. You know,
can smell it, no?
you can. And look, I was actually vaping in the office for a while. I don't know if you remember that.
But it's not disgusting for people around.
Some people
Right.
like the smell. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
For the
that's
most of people, it's not disgusting. It's like cigarettes. I think for
Most
half of the population, is like not good.
Yeah, they smell terrible.
Cigars is for most of people are not really good.
Not good.
W-
Oh, I
vape-
love
yeah.
I love the
You love the smell of
cigars.
cigarettes?
Yeah.
When
Cigars?
you are
Cigars,
smoking
cigars.
it, or when people around
Both,
you.
both.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a huge issue with the vape that you guys are talking about. Anybody can use it. It tastes really good. And I've had a few weird experiences where where like the feeling you get on the vape, if you smoke enough of it and too long, I was, get some really weird headaches when I would go and exercise and do something cardio, some kind of cardio, pain in my lungs. So not the typical type of like being worn out or something like that, but actual physical pain. So I after a few of those weird experiences, I was like, you know what? I think this vape is got to be really bad for you. And again, we have no longitudinal studies. We don't know anything about that.
I just yesterday have been told a story, or maybe a few days ago, that one of my friends, she knew a person who was constantly smoking vapes, and basically this glycerin overpopulated the lungs, and they kind of stuck to each other. So she actually, I don't know, he or she, but they actually went for it. It was like a critical condition. They have to be hospitalized. So I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't know how rare this kind of thing is, and I think nobody does still. So it's very dangerous, and the fact that it is so easy to get, to use, and not harmful in a way to people surrounding us is potentially very, very.
To that point, I've heard many anecdotal cases also of people having very severe acute reactions to the vape. And
like
that's,
allergic?
No, not sorry. Yeah, reactions may be the wrong word. Not allergic, but an acute condition that develops from vape usage. So again, I think whereas when I did a little bit of reading, the early literature seems to suggest that cigarettes are still worse for you, particularly in the long run. But I think the issue becomes if you abuse the vape, which is much easier to abuse because you can always have it. You just recharge it, and then you buy a new one if you need to. So again, that ease of friction, that low friction is a problem. It tastes very good. If you're using vape, to that extent, I have heard of these cases of people even dying, young people, because their lungs have some sort of acute condition that develops quickly because glycerin's a foreign, substance that just builds up in the lungs. So I think vape is terrible. I've totally stayed away from that for a long time.
Have you tried it?
I have, yeah. I was vaping for a while,
For a while. Like how long?
about probably a year.
Oh, okay.
But you used it as like a primary source.
Yeah, it was primary source of nicotine, absolutely. I mean, I was vaping every day.
How easy it was to exchange it for something else, or
It definitely became an addiction to an extent where, again, you're getting enough of that nicotine that you do start to crave the nicotine. So again, after I had a few of these weird experiences where pain in the lungs, bizarre headaches when I was using it, I just said, I'm not going to do any more vape. So unfortunately, that coincided with the trip that me and my friends took for my 30th birthday to Kazakhstan. I think I've told you about this trip. Former part of your guys' country, a very nice country. We had a very good experience, but they had very cheap cigarettes. So then a few of us started when we were out partying and whatever, why don't we, try the cheap cigarettes? We start getting to the cigarettes. And then cigarettes became my sort of nicotine crutch to an extent. And that continued for probably about a year or 9 months, something like that. And it's interesting because cigarettes is a totally different experience. So you do feel less in shape where walking, upstairs becomes a little bit more labored, but nothing like the vape where it felt like, like you get a really severe headache all of a sudden. You get really weird pain in your lungs. The cigarette was like you could sort of feel the slow deterioration of your lungs, but again, nothing that's going to kill you overnight. So... yeah, and then at that point, it was, maybe...
So cigarettes like a tax, and
exactly.
vape is like a Russian roulette.
Like Russian roulette, exactly. Or like a Trump tariff, one of the... so you got the tax and the tariff. But look, cigarettes are terrible as well. We all know that. And I felt, not good, obviously, on them. Cardio health went down quickly, right? Running around and stuff like that. I couldn't do it to the same extent. Now, the problem was I got off of that with the pouches. So you brought up these pouches. Neither of you guys have tried.
No, but I have seen people who do it regularly.
Yep.
From Norway.
Sure.
Just imagine 25% of Swedish men, adult Swedish men, use these pouches daily.
Daily. Wow, 25%.
25%.
Of Swedish men.
Yes.
Wow. And this is where the pouches get interesting, because then some people say, okay, these nicotine pouches are a great and healthier alternative to smoking. And I agree with that. Basically, that is true. Obviously, it's just nicotine. You're not getting the smoke. You're not getting the lung damage, any of that. So when I got on these, obviously, I felt much better from a lung perspective and from a cardio perspective. But the other issue I ran into, which is why I've gotten off of all of that stuff, except for shisha when we go out, whatever it is, once a week, which is a different thing. But these pouches, you talk about like what was the term used? The lack of friction. You talk about the lack of friction. Those pouches are the easiest things to consume. You just take them, you put them in the upper gum, you just let them sit there, and then your body absorbs the nicotine. And it's really that simple. You can do these pouches constantly. You get the incredible nicotine hit of the focus, of the energy, of all of that. So it was great for work, for example.
But do you really get this like focus improvement, the productivity improvement?
Yes.
Because I saw this research from one of my favorite scientists, the Andrew Huberman, who always talks about the nicotine is one of the actually like best. Most efficient stimulators for your brain. He for example, like he himself, he consumes. I think he was talking about the gum, the nicotine gum. He consumes once a week, and he claims that based on his research, it improves the focus. Like, do you actually feel this?
100%. When I would take one in the morning and I would sit at the laptop and start working, yeah, you get focused. You get some burst of energy. It's like stronger caffeine almost. And there's like a level of task orientation where you just feel like you want to knock out whatever you have to knock out. Yeah, absolutely. It was very productive.
We are not giving any advice here, right?
Oh, I'll go into the negatives right after this, by the way.
Okay, good. Please jump.
Yeah, I was going to say, the positives are clear. We talked about it. Again, I don't want to promote it, but great for focus, appetite suppressant, dopamine hit, great energy. Now, the problem. And this, I had a very significant sort of addiction with the pouches to the point where I was doing these stronger pouches and I was doing upwards of 10 per day. at the peak, which is half a
I
canteen.
think you're not supposed to take.
You're not supposed to do that.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. I didn't think it was an issue because, again, I'm just getting this focus and everything else. It was great with work, so okay, let me take another one. Before I knew it, and I tried to cut back, I felt some kind of like actual withdrawal symptoms. And what was very interesting was then I did a little bit of research to understand why was that the case. So when I tried to get off the pouches, legitimately, for the first time, I had that kind of feeling of like, feeling a bit intense and tense and blurry mind and everything. It was difficult to focus and all of that. What I read was that these pouches, and what I would advise anybody who's interested in trying these pouches, you need to be extremely careful because, again, it's a lot of nicotine. It's pure nicotine. The friction to use is so low. And the capacity and ease to get addicted is very high. Part of it being the absorption rate of nicotine with the pouches is up to 5 times higher than with cigarettes. What that means is the cigarette, so I looked this up, one cigarette has 10 milligrams of nicotine, for example. The pouches have anywhere between 4 and 10 milligrams. It could even be higher. I was doing the 10 milligrams. So one pouch equals one cigarette from a nicotine content perspective. Problem is, the pouches you absorb up to 50% of the nicotine, cigarettes 10%. So for example, if you do, which I was doing at the peak, 10 pouches of 10 milligram nicotine pouches, you would absorb 50 milligrams of nicotine in that day. That would be the equivalent of 50 cigarettes, which is 2.5 packs. So these pouches, and I know a lot of people who've used the pouches and also had similar issues where you start to get some mild withdrawal. And then if you take it, too intense, you can have some, more proper withdrawal. So yeah, I think it's a bit dangerous. I read that, again, nicotine, the addictive potential is actually similar to cocaine. So it's at a similar level, not the capacity to be addicted, not the withdrawal symptoms, not the health risks, but pure as a drug, as addictive more or less as cocaine. And then again, I noticed some of the issues where you've got an elevated heart rate from high nicotine use. The pouches are obviously a great example of that. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up. You can have gum issues from these pouches. Obviously,
It's just burning through.
It burns. It literally burns the gums. So you can get these like blisters that develop and stuff. It's not good. Supposedly, some recent research suggests that even your insulin sensitivity can be impacted. The point is, nicotine is not good to be abused. And all of these different ways of consuming it is just a gateway to become addicted. And people need to be extremely careful, particularly with vape and pouches, where the data's not really there. And then people say now the pouches, that's a healthy alternative. Yeah, fine compared to vaping and cigarettes, but you still don't want to get addicted to that stuff. And and now they got nicotine drinks. I mean, they're constantly coming up with new ways of doing it. But
The funny story about like his nicotine consumption history in Russia. Like if you think about it, like are you familiar? Not familiar?
I'm not.
No?
I'm not.
You're not familiar.
So another Russian star.
Probably not.
Think about it. Like it was introduced with Peter the Great in early 18th century. He traveled to Europe to establish the connection with European countries, and he brought the pipes, the smoking pipes, and then he said like, okay, all the like noble families, like if you're part of the noble family, if you want to be close to the Tsar, to the emperor at that time, you consume tobacco now. You smoke. That's it. That's how it started.
You had to smoke.
Yeah. He said like basically he introduced the fashion. So he introduced like the saloons. And he said like it should be the part of the brand and the image of the noble Russian family that if you are part of the inner circle, you smoke.
And it was a general policy of Peter the Great because
yeah.
he told what to wear, how to cut
How to
your
shave
hair.
the beard.
Yes.
Yeah. This is
So
the famous
he
thing.
was,
Didn't he also change the court language to French? Was
No,
it Peter the Great?
No.
It was later. It was later.
That was somebody else?
But
Okay.
he was definitely trying to make Russia great again,
Okay.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, Mara. No. Yeah. Anyways.
So then with that, basically years of years, and by early 2000s, Russia was #1 European nation in terms of cigarettes consumption.
Wow.
40%.
And when did that start?
40% of population
40%,
consumed.
40% of the population consumes cigarette at least one per day.
When?
Early 2000s.
Wow.
Now Russia was overcome by Serbia. So now Russia went down to 30% and Serbia is 40%.
But it's still very high.
It's still very high.
Wow.
And Russia is actually one of the largest cigarettes producers in the world. All the largest factories of Philip Morris, GTI, all these tobacco giants, they are in Russia. And they still are in Russia.
Is it an expert for Russia
Yes,
as well?
yes,
Wow.
it is an expert. These factories, they produce like somewhere around 15% of global tobacco production for these companies. So, for example, Philip Morris, they have the factory, and it's around 12 to 15% of the overall cigarettes production, and they sell this to the entire region.
Okay.
And then the interesting thing is that that was in 2000s, 40%. And then in 2012, I think, or 2013, they introduced a lot of severe laws about the tobacco consumption and cigarettes consumption.
True.
Basically, I think you remember
Yeah, I
this,
remember.
right?
Yes.
They banned cigarettes in public places. So you are not allowed to smoke cigarette 200 meters around any public place. It started with this. Now, for example, airport, not allowed, only in specific room within the airport, and then 200 meters away from the airport building. Same for governmental institutions, education institutions, shopping centers, and everything like that. And then they expanded this to the cafes and restaurants. So we used to have a lot of places. That was my suffering in my first years of the university, where you go in the cafe, and you have the smoking room and non-smoking room, and it doesn't matter, because the smoke from the smoking room, it's still there is no actually the boundary. Smoke doesn't understand the boundary, and then they banned it. So now there is you cannot. There is no even the thing as a smoking room in any Russian cafe. So, for example, when we go to Europe and we can still see people smoking in there, that looks very weird right now to me personally.
I have to say that change was amazing.
That was
it was amazing because restaurants by themselves, they feel always fresh. They are not becoming this smoky room because whenever you smoke, it's not only a local problem that people around are smoking. If you don't smoke, especially,
it leaves a smell as well.
Yeah, it
right?
leaves a smell. It leaves the feeling of this.
The fumes are here. Yeah, right.
That's interesting. So Russia in some ways followed the American approach to smoking a bit because we started making these changes in the 2000s as well. So you had very strict states like New York City and some of the other major cities that did exactly that. So public places, it was banned. They massively raised taxes on cigarettes as well. So
right, great point.
Yeah.
Great point. They did the same. They doubled the prices of cigarette because of the tax.
That's a huge thing. So, and then that curbed a lot of demand. So demand has fallen massively in the U.S. again to now where it's 12 to 14% of Americans. You mentioned that Russia, it's way down as well. But then interesting, they try to curb one area of nicotine use or tobacco use, and it's growing in another one. So yeah, that's very interesting. And every country's handling it differently. So
all these other ways of nicotine delivery, they're not regulated. Or are they?
Very limited. So I know in the UK, they just recently passed something around vaping. I think they're getting rid of the flavored vapes. So you can only have smoke flavored or tobacco flavored, whatever it is, something like that. I know some people were talking about making vaping only available to people who were, well, I guess it already is if you're over 18, something like that. But
it never works.
Yeah, it never works. But then it's... I think there has been some regulations introduced, but I think that's almost like the old news now. I think the new thing is now the pouches. So, and then apparently you've got even nicotine infused drinks. So you've got this constant innovation. I think the data eventually, once this all comes out, what the negatives are around vaping, what the negatives might be around the pouches, then I think you're going to see some sort of policy change. Because, it's insane, the quick and rapid uptake in these new, methods of using.
So you agree that these things should be regulated,
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
not banned. at the
No,
same-
not bad. Look, I'm a libertarian in many ways. I think in the U.S., where we have a very strong
I like how he
libertarian.
changes hats. Like I'm a MAGA in this way. I'm a libertarian.
I'm a MAGA
That's good.
libertarian. I'm a MAGA
No,
libertarian.
I'm all for this kind of
I
Americans
agree,
who
I
are
agree.
flexible.
I agree.
Needs to be flexible,
I agree.
ideologically. I'm not a communist, unlike you, Vlad. You know, I know you guys are the Soviets here.
Since when I've become a communist? Like I've never been one.
That's a good point. Yeah, well, because you guys are Russian, right? Russia, Soviet, same. But yeah, look, I do from my society perspective, and every society is different, and I think you need to respect societal differences. But in America, where we got this strong freedom sort of part of our culture, and obviously that's gun ownership, that's all of the 10 amendments and all that. I do think people should, in the U.S., be able to use those products, but obviously with the restrictions. And I think the biggest issue for me is that with cigarettes, they've done a very aggressive job with the marketing around cigarettes, with trying to dampen demand, and it's worked to a large extent. You go to any airport, you go anywhere trying to buy cigarettes, and you literally see the images on the cigarette pack of
Disgusting images.
disgusting,
Yes.
what your lungs look like from cigarettes, what your hands, it's really disgusting stuff. But yet they've done nothing around these other areas. So I think, again, as we find out more of the consequences of vaping and pouches and all of that, I think, regulators should just inform the public. I think the most important thing is to inform rather than punish. I would rather see more research and investment be done into understanding what the negative ramifications are of these things.
I think the most important thing in terms of regulation is just economic, economic actions. You have to make it unaffordable, especially for young people, because any other method, like the marketing that you were talking about, putting like bad pictures, would it ever restrict person who wants to smoke a cigarette from buying one?
Good point.
I think it's not. I think it's creating good image for like a new generation that it's generally a bad thing. It's considered to be shady stuff. That is really good. But the strongest way to regulate is always economic
But
ways.
yeah,
I think, and I agree with you, but I think there is another thing that they can do rather than the prohibiting or putting the administrative measures. I think since this nicotine consumption, it's a part of the style and the lifestyle. You should marketing should work in a way not to show them the disgusting pictures, but to show them it's not cool. Because what I mean is, like, when you see a lot of Hollywood movies, like old Hollywood movies, like, think about it, like, I don't know, Breakfast at Tiffany's, all this stylish movies, everybody's smoking. They show you the culture. Then even now when you read about the vape and everything, why youngsters buy them? Because it's the vibe. And they like this vibe. So I don't know how, but I think if you show that it's not stylish, if it's not trendy, if it's not fashion, not attractive, and eventually the demand will go down.
Problem is when government tries to do this stuff,
Exactly.
it is usually like looks cringe, just generally speaking.
That's true.
Yeah, so you have to be really smart about it at the same time.
that's true. My question, though,
They know how to do it good, by the way. They just tell Hollywood to do this.
yeah, when Hollywood does it, they do a very good job. That's true. But my question, I think, mainly to to the tax argument is, fine, that does work, and as you said, that's the most effective way to to reduce demand. But then what about alcohol? Then what about other unhealthy behaviors? So the problem I have, maybe more as a libertarian, MAGA libertarian, right, is if you want to dissuade certain behaviors, you're sort of picking and choosing what behaviors you want to promote and not promote. So why is nicotine or tobacco the enemy today? But then what about alcohol? Alcohol has massive negative health consequences also.
But it is heavily taxed as well.
It depends on where you are. It is taxed, but it's not taxed nearly to the same extent as tobacco, for example. Cigarettes, it's way higher. So I think that's one question. What about crappy food? What about fast food? What about preservatives? What about sugar? What about all of these other elements that have helped to make us less healthy? If we're just targeting this one, health scourge, fine, I understand it. But I think that brings up a wider conversation of, What if we, which is why, from my perspective, at the end of the day, it's in the eye of the beholder. It's the user themselves. You need to, manage yourself and get the information. I tried all these products, all these nicotine products. They're, again, nicotine is, I'm not against nicotine in general, but there's negative consequences to all of them. And I think people just need to make the right choice and try to be healthier. But yeah,
you're right. This is a good point because, for example, like I have never tried cigarette. I tried once. I couldn't smoke it. I couldn't smoke vape. Dima said like he couldn't smoke vape as well. Couldn't smoke cigarette. But at the same time, like we choose to do shisha from time to time because like you know what you're getting, so you make the choice. So this is
and you're getting great Russian shisha.
That's
great
true.
Russian
That's
shisha.
true. We'll definitely talk about this in one of the episodes. But
we want to tease the early episode. Yeah.
There is a Russian shisha phenomenon. Yeah, that's true.
And we will be discussing Russian shisha soon. Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Culture Clash podcast. Again, if you like our content, like our videos on YouTube, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, X, and with that, we'll see you soon.